This AI agent turns a simple message from your phone into viral content. So let's check this out. I'm on my phone using Telegram and we're gonna make some content. Can you store this content for refinement later? I want to write about why it's hard for beginners to get started in AI automation. It's going to process that request and respond back with a Google Doc. There's the Google Doc. We can open it. We could edit the document from here, but we can use the agent as well. Can you go ahead and expand on C99 and explain that the main reason it's hard for beginners to start with AI automation is getting lost in all of the daily trends instead of solving business problems for business owners? There's the response. We can open up the document, and then there's the expanded on idea. Perfect. Now, can you turn C99 into a tweet pic? Then it responds back and actually shows us the image. We can expand on it. And then believe it or not, we can turn that into an AI video using my avatar. Can you turn C99 into a video? So there's the AI video. You can actually watch and review in Telegram. And then believe it or not, we can publish straight to social media. Can you go ahead and publish C99 to LinkedIn? And there we have the post on LinkedIn. And there it is. Go ahead and like my own post. And it's easy to manage all of your content as well. Show me the last 10 pieces of content in the system. This system generates viral content in seconds compared to the hours it normally takes. And here's the best part. You can build a system to grow your business. I use the similar system to hit 100K a month. You can sell this as an AI product like the system I sell for 5K, or you could easily charge content creators thousands of dollars per month just to access it. If that sounds complicated, don't worry. I'll show you how to think through and build your own AI voice-powered content machine. First, we'll build out the Telegram assistant. Then I'll walk through how to build the N8N agent and the supporting MCP server, how to build a simple database to store the content, and then make sure to stick around to the end where I show 3 different ways to monetize the AI voice agent. So we're gonna start with a blank workspace and we're gonna build out our agent looking something like this, also using an MCP content repurposing server. And we'll have to build out some sort of database to store everything, which is also great to have when you are managing all of your content from a desktop. It's great to have this point of view as well, where you can manage everything and see a lot more data. Here you can actually see the tweet pic that we created and also the AI avatar video. So let's jump in. First thing we need to do is we need to add a Telegram trigger. As new messages come into the system, we can go ahead and manage those. Now, the first thing that you're going to have to do is create an account. I already have a bunch of credentials in here, but I'll have to create a new one just to show you how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and rename this to YouTube demo. Then I'm going to jump over to Telegram. I'm going to use the web interface, and then you're going to want to search for bot father without a space. It should be a verified account. This is an official account that allows you to create your own bot. Once you send a message to bot father, you might have to start a conversation in the upper right. But once you start a conversation, you'll see a list here. And if you need to, you can always type start, and it's going to give you that list again. And we're just going to create a new bot. It's going to ask you a couple questions. What are we going to call it? YouTube demo voice. Then you have to come up with a username, YouTube demo voice bot. Then you're going to get this API key here. You just copy that, come back to N8N. You're going to drop that access token here, and then we're going to go ahead and save it. You should see that connection tested successfully. And then you just want to make sure that you're using the right credentials, and then you're good to go. You should be able to come up here and test this step, and then you should be able to open up your new bot. When you first enter, you might need to start the conversation just like this. That actually might trigger, that actually triggers a incoming message, which is start. So we know everything is working. If you wanted to test it again with a real message, then we can see here that we have that real message. So now one of the most important things that I want to talk about throughout this automation is that I have a strong focus on user experience. A lot of people are using AI agents, but they're not really necessarily using them in a real way. And I want to talk a lot about that, because in this situation here, if we're trying to make it easy to create content and we're on the go on our phone, here I'm on the web, but let's just assume I'm on my phone, there might be different ways that you want to communicate with your bot. If you're sitting down and you have your full attention, then it might be easy to come down here and actually type a message like store this content idea. But if you're on your phone and you're walking around and you aren't able to type, you might want to send a voice message. Hello, hello, something like that. So now when you're building out your automation here, you want to be able to handle both text messages and then also audio messages that are coming into the system. And then on the way out of the agent, when it actually responds back to Telegram, you might want to be able to send a text message or a voice message depending on the situation. So when we build this out, we're going to build something that actually makes sense and it's focused on real world situations, not just showing you something flashy around AI agents. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to add in an AI agent, and then here I'm going to change the source to define below. Then I'm going to jump back here, and it looks like it automatically connected this. If it didn't, you can go ahead and connect it. That way we have this existing message here that we tested before. And if you don't, then go ahead and test it again and send a message, because we do need that input here. So now I can come here for the prompt message. So now what we're doing here is we're passing in the message from Telegram. I'm going to first turn this into an expression, and then I'm going to drag and drop the message from Telegram directly into the AI agent. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a system message now, which is how we define how the agent behaves. And I'm also going to require specific output as well. And when you turn this on, you're going to need to follow this through. We're going to add an output parser. We can go ahead and put structured output parser. And here's where we can define JSON, which is going to define what is going to come out of the agent. So this allows us to create very structured data for any of the logic that comes after the agent. And what we want to be able to do is handle text or voice data. If I jump over to the example here, when we're sending text back, it needs to go down a certain path where we're just sending a simple text message. But when we want to send audio, it needs to go down this other path where we actually generate the audio and then we reply with that actual file so that we actually receive an audio message. Let's say you're not able to read the message and you want an audio message back and you just want to be able to play it. That's what we're going to be able to build. So here in the structured output, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to erase this information here, and I'm simply going to type text output from AI agent and voice output from AI agent. And so what we can do with this is that inside the agent here, as we build out our different tools and connect it up to our MCP server, the agent can actually respond with text or voice, and then it will be properly structured so that here we can take the proper path to then do the proper action, whether it's text or voice. So now just some house cleaning. Let's go ahead and connect up an AI model to power the AI agent. We'll go ahead and just use OpenAI. I'll go ahead and use ChatGPT 4o mini unless it causes problems, but we'll start with that. And then let's go ahead and add some memory so that in between messages, our agent is able to keep track of a conversation. We'll just go ahead and use simple memory. For the session ID, I'm going to go ahead and change this to define below. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to map in the chat ID into the key. So this chat ID is going to be the key that differentiates one conversation from another. If you and your client were both talking to the same bot and you wanted to differentiate the conversations, this is how you would do it. It would now have separate memory for each conversation. So now we haven't added any tools yet. So really this agent, all it does, take an incoming message and process it with ChatGPT and produce a response. Let's go ahead and run it and just see what happens, see if there's any errors. So it went ahead and responded, and it's just simply responding to this message here, real message. And so of course the agent's like, could you please clarify what you mean by real message? So now we have our text message coming in. Now there is something else I often do as well, which is just a very quick reply. So I'm going to send a message. You want to set up your credentials. I'm using the same bot here. We're going to put in a chat ID. And for the text here, we're going to go ahead and say, sure. One moment. And what this is going to do is it's just going to respond right away because the agent can take some time to process. And so it's nice to respond just so we know we got a message. And then I'm going to reply to ID. And then for this, I'm going to go ahead and turn on expression, and we're going to map in the message ID. Going to have to erase that default text that was there. That way it actually responds directly to the message. So this one here. And then I'm also going to add one other field, which is append N8N attribution. And the reason why is because if we run this, we're going to see that it adds this message here, which is really unnecessary. But if you add this append N8N attribution and you turn that off, then when you reply, it'll look just like this. So we have this initial message just to make sure that the user knows that we got the message, and then we'll respond in just a moment while the agent is processing the information. So now what we need to do is let's go ahead and retest this trigger here. Looks like there was already a message there, so it's not waiting. Had some test data. So now it's waiting for a new trigger. Now let's send an audio message. so that we can build out the next path. This is an audio test. So now what's going to happen is we're going to get a response into the trigger. We can go ahead and do the reply. So now you can see it's responding to our voice message. Now in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to create a switch statement, one for text and then another for processing audio. So we'll come up here and we'll type switch. And now what we can do is we can look at our Telegram message and we're going to look at the trigger, and we're basically going to look for a file ID. So if I drag in the file ID and we basically say is a string and does not exist, then we're going to go down the first path. Then let's add another routing rule. We'll add the file ID, and then we'll use the string and we'll say where the string exists. So in this case, when we test it, it should send it to output 1, which is this second path that we've created here. Now, if it was just a text message, it would come across the top and it would go right into the agent. It would start to process. Now what we need to do is actually transcribe that audio and then go ahead and pass it into the agent as a text message. So now first what we need to do is we need to create a new path. We'll go into Telegram. Now we need to get a file. We need to download it from Telegram. This is super simple. We're just going to put in the file ID. Here we go. We're just going to drop that right here. And we're going to download as equal to true. We can go ahead and test that step. Here we have that file. Now we can move along here. In this case, we're going to go with OpenAI, and we are going to transcribe a recording. You'll need to set up your OpenAI credentials, resources, audio, transcribe a recording. We're going to map in the data. I don't think we need to add any options here. We should be good. We can go ahead and test this step. This is an audio test. So now all we need to do is map this into the agent here. Going to move this over. We can even tidy things up. And now all we need to do is come into the agent. And now we had this original message here, but now what we need to do is we need to process the text message if it's there, but if it's not, then we need to process the transcribed message. So to do that, all you have to do is come here to the message, and we're going to put 2 question marks. And this is just JavaScript that says if there is a value in this text to use it, otherwise use the value after it. We'll scroll down, we'll take the text here, and we'll drop it right there. So what this is saying is use the text if it's there, otherwise use the transcription. And we should be able to test this. It looks like we're having an issue with this simple memory. Let's go check out what that is. So now what's happening here is just this JSON is now broken because we have an additional value here. So when we added that, it was using this. And now that this is here, that JSON is different. This is no longer the previous message. So we just need to go into the simple memory, and we're going to take this out. We can scroll down, and now we're going to grab the chat ID again. And now it's going to directly reference the module itself. So we won't have that issue again. We can test the agent. It's having another issue. And we're actually having the same issue here. So again, whenever you have $JSON, it's always referring, if we're here in this module and we refer to $JSON, it's always referring to the previous module. And when we first set up the agent and the memory, $JSON was this module, but then we added the reply. So this module doesn't have that same message. So all we're doing is correcting it to use this node, come back down to the bottom. We're going to grab the message. But now we run into an issue here because that message does not exist. So there's a couple different ways that you could fix this. I'm going to go ahead and use a little trick here. I'm going to jump into the simple memory, and I'm just going to grab the text here since we already know that this text works. And we'll come back to the agent, and we need everything up to the message. So I'll just replace this and remove those extra curly braces there, and we should be good to go. But let's go ahead and test it, make sure everything is all right. So let's go ahead and test the agent again. And I'm actually seeing we mapped in the wrong value here. I didn't map in the actual text from OpenAI. So we'll pull this back out and we'll drag this in just like that. And let's go ahead and test this again. And there we go. So basically what you're learning there is just we didn't map in the right values, and you have to be careful about how you do that. So there's a real world test of running into some issues and fixing that. And now we have our response from the agent. And then here you can see the output. And if we look at that here, now you can see we have that structured output. This is an audio test and the voice is neutral. So because we haven't really defined anything here in the system prompt, it It doesn't really know how to handle this yet, although it is still adhering to the output. In just a few minutes, we'll get more specific on how to handle that. So you can see here, it's already formatting our output to the structured text we have. It's not exactly what we need, so let's go ahead and define it a bit more. You are a helpful assistant that helps create content. When you respond, use this JSON text, voice, make sure everything's in quotes with the colon. You can always expand this, or let's just go ahead and use the expression because eventually we'll have some additional variables in here. We'll need the expression anyways, and then you can open this up just like that. And then here we can say, respond with the full output from the AI agent. And then just for testing here, let's go ahead and just say, we'll put a static message in here for the voice response. Okay, there you go. Let's go ahead and run it again to see what we get. So in this case, it said, this is the audio test, and the voice says, okay, there you go. So you can see it's interesting with these agents here. They're very good at kind of figuring things out. In this case, it knows that we're supposed to respond with the full output of the AI agent. So whatever the AI agent comes up with, it's going to respond in text. But in this case, it knew to keep that exactly as it should be. So now what we can do is on the back end of this, we can handle both types of output. Now, again, I'm just showing you how this works in real life. You would use text or voice depending on the situation. And that's how you're going to engineer your voice agent to be smart and to be focused on user experience. But first, we just have to understand the fundamentals of how to control these different elements. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and respond to the text message. I'm going to type Telegram, and we're just going to send a message. And again, we're going to use the chat ID here. And it looks like the switch statement is carrying through some of that information. So we'll use that chat ID. And then for the text, we're going to use the text from the AI agent. And then again, we're going to add a field and turn off the N8N attribution. And then here we are going to reply to a message ID. And that message ID, it looks like it's still being passed through from the switch, which is great. We'll map that in. And now if we test this, jump back to here, we're going to see this is an audio test. So that's working. And now what we need to do is map out the audio test. So in this case, what we need to do is generate some audio and then reply with the audio itself. So I'll need to create a module first. We'll use OpenAI again. We'll go ahead and generate audio. We'll use the defaults for now. For the text input, we haven't connected it, so we don't have it. So let's go ahead and connect it. Now, if we double click into the OpenAI module, we should have the voice. So now we can actually drag the voice here. I'll leave that voice alone. So now for options, we need to add a special option and a special response format, because if you want the audio message to be a native format and not just feel like it's an attachment, which really does have a different effect on how it interacts with you. It's going to come across as an attachment, not like these nice messages as if somebody hit the audio. It affects the performance of the agent. And since we're really concerned about customer experience here, instead of using MP3, we're going to use Opus. So now let's go ahead and generate the audio. Should create a file. And now we can go ahead and respond to Telegram with that file. So in this case, we are going to send an audio file, and the chat ID, you're going to have to jump back to the switch, should be there as well. There's that chat ID. It should be a binary file, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. There we go. That looks right. Reply markup. We don't need anything for that. Let's take a look at the options. Do we need any of these options? Yeah, we want to reply to a message ID, put in that message ID. And now let's go ahead and test the step. And now we have an audio, and notice it looks like a native audio. If you were to do an MP3, it would look different and it would act different, more like an attachment, not like an actual chat back and forth with another person. And then we could play that message.
Okay, there you go.
So there we go. Now we have the basics set up for our Telegram agent that handles text and voice and can respond in text and voice to create a smooth customer experience no matter where they are or how they're communicating, so that it feels natural. The whole point of building these AI agents and connecting them to these interfaces that people understand is that you have to use them the way that people use them so that the experience is seamless and it makes your product more valuable. And if you're enjoying this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It tells me what type of content you want more of. All right, so let's keep moving along. I'm gonna save it. And now what we need to do is we need to start to build out the actual MCP server. At the same time, we're gonna need to build out a database. So I'm gonna start a database database from scratch, and we'll go ahead and close this. And just like in all my databases, I have an auto incrementing CID here. That way, when I'm talking to my agent, I can reference a piece of content with a short number instead of trying to match up a title like this. Like, it's very easy to say, hey, can you help me modify C99? Or can you help me turn C30 into an image? Or can you help me turn C91 into a video? So in the database here, I'm actually going to come here first. I'm going to edit the notes. I'm going to turn that into an ID. We'll turn this into an auto incrementing field, which is an auto number field. Then I'll jump back to this first column here, and I'm going to call it the CID, and we'll make this a formula. And basically what we're going to do is make a string here, C, and then an ampersand. And then I will reference the ID field. And then when I click save, we're going to have that CID. I'll go ahead and just sort it, CID, and then I'll hide the field here. And then what are we going to need here? Well, let's just go ahead and make a description. And then we have to turn this from a user field into a single line text. And we'll go ahead and turn the status into our text field, which stores the content. We'll turn that into a long text so it can handle longer ideas in text. And then there's an attachment field here. I'm going to turn this into simply an image. And then I'm going to create another attachment called video. And that would then allow us to store images and video if we were to build that into our agent. And just keep in mind, if you do want to get access to this Airtable template and the automations that I'm building out today, make sure to jump into the No-Code Architects community inside the classroom. In the automation vault, you'll find the templates that we're working on today, plus other N8N automations. You can even get access to KEDB Solo, which is a full content database that's worth over $1,000. You just need to make it to level 4 by contributing back to the community, or you can get instant access with an annual subscription. Now, we're going to have to go back and forth between a few different screens here to get started. I am going to open up a new workflow to build out our MCP server. Here's the MCP server that was powering the example that I showed you at the beginning of the video. This MCP server has tools to update the publish date, get the record ID of any piece of content in our system, approve content, delete content, get content, capture new ideas. It'll actually read content back to you. This is where we create the tweet pic and generate the video, rewrite content, and also publish content. So now the reason why I'm using an MCP server is because it makes the building of these agents quite a bit easier. So when you start to build out these agents, it becomes quite complex once you start to have a bunch of different tools like we have here. And what the MCP server does is it keeps track of all of the different things that need to happen for any given tool, what fields that need to get filled out. You can use these description fields to determine what needs to happen and how it's supposed to get that information. And what the MCP server does is it gathers all of these tools and what's needed for each one of them. And then it's able to pass that back to the agent so that the agent knows exactly how to use those tools. But that is really only half of why this is really important. Now let's use the KEDB Solo content machine to illustrate this, because the way this system works is that not only can you interact with your content through the Telegram system, but you can also manage it through the Airtable system. Both of these systems are connected. In here, in this system, you can also use these actions to do the same thing. You can rewrite text, you can go text to AI video, you can create the tweet pic. And now there's two different systems that are actually doing the same thing. So now if I had this Telegram agent here, and I built out all of these custom tools connected to the agent, and then I needed to also build out all of those tools for the content system here, I'm really doubling up the work. And then when I add new tools to Telegram, I'd have to come over and add new tools to KEDB Solo. And that's just going to create a lot of friction and a lot of added work. But if I just build out one MCP content repurposing server, both systems are able to connect just to the server. They know exactly how to use it. I can build one set of tools for two totally different systems, and I can easily connect up 1, 2, 3, or if I have other systems that I want to connect up later, I can connect as many different systems that I want up to this MCP server. And then each one of those systems will know how to use these tools without having to rebuild everything and re-describe everything, because it takes a lot of time to describe these different tools and get them working properly. With an MCP server, I only have to set that up once, and I can connect that up to as many different agents or applications as needed. So now let's just go ahead and work through our first tool here. And it probably makes the most sense to add the capture idea because we want to get some content into our new system here in order to manipulate it. So I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this. We'll call it the KEDB Solo YouTube Demo. We'll make it purple. And I'm going to go ahead and add a new tool here. Now, in this case, if your tool needs to do more than one thing, you won't be able to just add a single tool here. So if I come back to my MCP content repurposing server, you're going to notice if I'm just updating the publish date and I only need one tool to do that, then I can just add that tool. Now, in this case, when I capture a new idea, I'm going to go ahead and open up this sub workflow here, which is what this tool does. And you're going to see we have a few different steps here. In this production example of this automation, it creates a Google Drive. It's creating a document to actually store that content. We're going to create a slightly more simple version of this so it doesn't take quite as much time. But anytime you have multiple modules, then you're going to need to create either a webhook and a whole other scenario, or in this case, what we can do is we can create a workflow execution where one workflow calls another. So let's jump back to our agent here, and we're going to call an N8N workflow. We'll go ahead and rename this capture new idea. Rename. We'll give the tool a name as well. Capture new idea tool. Call this tool when we are adding a new content idea to the database. Now, these descriptions and the names, they're a lot more important than people think. The MCP server is going to read the description. It's not just for you, it's for the server as well. It's going to communicate this information back to the agent so that the agent knows, right? So I'm really writing this not just for myself so that when I come back here, I know what it does. I'm doing this for the agent. And now here, what we need to do is add the sub workflow. So in this case here, we haven't created that yet. So I'm going to go ahead and create a sub workflow in my personal workspace area. And now what we have here is the trigger, which is executed by the server. When that command comes through, it's going to use this tool and it's going to pass that data through to the sub workflow. And then whatever the last node here is in the workflow, it's going to return that as data back to the server. You'll see how this works. It's not as complicated as you think. And once you understand this one time, you're going to be a master at using MCP servers with your AI agents. All right, so I'm just going to jump back and forth and just piece this together. So now here we need to add a tool. Now, instead of adding a tool and adding a bunch of tools like this where our agent becomes quite messy, we're going to add a single tool and we're going to add a MCP client tool. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and rename it to our MCP content tool. And now it's looking for the endpoint. So we'll jump back to our server. I'm going to grab this endpoint here. I have found that in this case, it's usually easier just to work with the production URL. I'm going to go ahead and click there and grab that and drop it back in here. We'll go ahead and leave the authentication off, and the tools to include, we're just going to include all tools. So now we have this new tool here, and I'm going to go ahead and save our workflow. So now when you're building out these agents, this system message is going to be where you codify all of the different things and the order things need to be done in order for the agent to be successful. The server is helping communicate all of the different tools that are available and how to use them. But there might be a situation where you have to call tool 1 before tool 2, because tool 2 needs something that was done in tool 1 in order to complete successfully. Like in this example here, whenever we are deleting content, in order to delete content, we need a record ID from Airtable. And so we have this other tool here, which gets us the record ID from the CID. Then we're able to use that record ID to actually delete the content. So now what we need to do here is we need to define the variables coming into this workflow. So I'm going to open that up here. I'm going to go ahead and rename this workflow as well. The more you describe things, the better things work. We'll type capture new idea. Then I'm going to add a field here and we're going to type new content. And so what's going to happen is when this scenario executes, it's going to provide us a string called new content that we can then use in the rest of this workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and save this here. I'll go ahead and rename this as well, just to keep everything nice and clean. Capture new idea. We've got our server here. Let's save that as well. At this point, what we can do is we can turn on the server because we're using the production URL. Otherwise, every time you want to test this, you have to test the workflow and it just goes a bit slower. And with these servers in particular, it's pretty easy just to do it this way. So now I'm going to come back to our agent. I haven't described anything about this tool. Let's just see what it does without any further description. Let's test this workflow. Back to our demo. Capture this new content idea related to why MCP servers are super cool. And let's just see how it goes through the system. So it went to the tool and it actually responded back. The idea about why MCP servers are super cool has been successfully captured. Now we know that it didn't, but it's saying that because it didn't incur any errors along the way. And if I jump over to the server here and we look at the executions, there's going to be something that comes through just like that. And let's see if it actually brought the data through. So let's go into the execution here. And it looks like there is no data that was brought through. And the reason for that is because in our tool here, we didn't describe how to handle the data. So if we come back to the editor and we go into our tool, we can see we have the new content. And the reason why we have this content here is I want to be real explicit. The server knows that we have this data that we need because it's connected to our sub workflow, this one here. And in the workflow, we defined this variable. But what we didn't do is tell the server how to get the data here. So it just passed an empty value here. So we're going to click this button here, which tells the MCP server to get the data from the actual AI agent. And then what we want to do is add a description to really be clear about where it gets this data from. So get the new content from the input to the AI agent. So now it's come back here. Let's go ahead and save it. And then let's jump back to our agent here. And you can kind of see it that you kind of have to go back and forth a little bit to get some momentum, to get some of these initial pieces put together. So we'll just go ahead and put in the same idea here. Capture this new content idea about MCP servers and why they are cool. So we have our agent working here. It called the MCP content tool. Let's jump over to the server, look at the executions. Now we have another one here. And now let's see what we got. Now that new content is there. Perfect. And now if I go into, again, that sub workflow here, and I were to look at the executions and we look here, we're going to see that it passed that data into the tool. And so now this is the execution. So we can't actually edit our automation from here. And if you come to the editor, let's use OpenAI to come up with a content description. So we have the idea, but what if we wanted to create a description? If you remember in our database here that we built, we have a description and then the actual text. They could be different. Here, if we were to come to OpenAI, we were going to message the model. Notice we don't have any input data. And if I execute previous nodes, it does bring this back here, which is good. So we can actually pull this in, but it doesn't have any actual data there. So I believe what you can do is you can come to the executions here and we can look at this actual run, copy that back to the editor. That way we can actually come in here and have something to actually use. Because if it's null, it's going to be hard. Okay. So now in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to pick a model. We'll type mini and we'll use 4.0 mini. And now here in the prompt, we'll say, please create a short forward description of this content idea below. Turn it into an expression. Go ahead and drag in the content here. User role, that's fine. Output, we'll go ahead and output it as a JSON just to make it easier. And now we should be able to run this and it should give us a short description. Here's our content. High performance scalable servers. And now what we can do is we can just insert this into Airtable. We'll create a record. You'll have to set up your credentials. In this case, for the base, I'll go ahead and use solo. Here's the YouTube demo. For the table, we'll go with table 1 because we forgot to rename it. So if I jump over here, we can rename this to content. Save, jump back to our workflow. And now it's going to give us those columns. So for the description, right, we can actually put in the description we came up with. And now for the text, we can drop in the text that was passed in from the agent. And we can go ahead and leave image and video blank because this has nothing to do with this particular tool. And then we're good to go. We can go ahead and test it. And we can come back to here. And now we've got that coming into our database, which is good. And then what's going to happen is all of the data that is returned in the output is going to be returned back to the agent itself. We defined the input here. So it's almost like a function, right? We're passing specific data in. And then if we need to process that data in the agent, if we need certain values from it, whatever we pass on this last node is going to be passed back to the agent. So we can go ahead and save this. You don't need to activate sub workflows. And now what we should be able to do without any interaction, should be able to test this workflow, capture this idea, how to build amazing AI agent products. Let's send it. Let's watch our agent. It's going to do the full job. Jump over to Airtable. We have the actual text, how to build amazing AI agent products. And then we have our description that we created from AI. And then we have the response. In this case, we have the full text response. And then this one here is going to be, again, it's going to be that static response that we added here in the agent. Now we could further customize the actual text and voice response. And in this case, what we might want to do is respond using text output from tool. And then we could say respond using voice output from the tool. And then below here, we can say, here are the tools and responses for each tool. And then we can start to define just some basic things about the tool. And I would recommend keep it simple until it doesn't work. But I will say, the thing that people get wrong is that their agents don't work and they get confused. They're like, what's the special format that we need in order to make this? They're looking for this like secret formula for writing out these system prompts. And the trick is that there isn't a secret. It just has to make sense. What happens is a lot of the time is I'll read what somebody put here and I don't understand it. So if I can't understand it, I can promise you the agent can't either. So keep it simple. And if it doesn't understand, just keep going back to it and make it more and more verbose so that it's very clear as to what it should do. You should be able to take this system prompt and give it to somebody. They should be able to perform the tasks, assuming they know how to execute the tool, assuming they knew how to use the hammer, they should be able to execute it themselves. They should be able to tell you how it's going to work and what steps to use. So in this case, we're going to say capture new idea. And then here you can just say, here is the output. And so you can have different output for different situations. So in this case, I'm just going to copy this and then paste it down here. And I could say CID, and then I could put something here that says EG, like example, C56 or C77 has been added to the database, period. And then here I could say something different if I wanted to, or I could say nothing at all. So what I could do in this situation is if I didn't want a voice response, because in this case, it might not make sense. Now, in these other tools that I was showing you here, I have a tool that says README, right? Because let's say I have a big piece of content that I've written out in one of these documents. Let's say I'm somewhere and I have one of these pieces of content and we have some content inside that document and I'm in a spot where I can't really read it or I don't want to, and I just wanted to read it back. That's what that tool is for. So in that case, I might map the contents of the document into the voice. But in this case, maybe I don't need a voice. And so I'll show you how to handle that. So in this case, we define the tool. I didn't say much else about it. And then here's going to be the text, CID. And then I gave this to tell it not to really respond with CID, but to use the actual CID from the database. Remember, we named this CID. We want CID 5 and CID 6, CID 5 and 4. We want that number, but we don't want voice. Okay. So then what we can do back here is we can add a filter here and we can say if, and then we can use this here. We can say where the string is not empty. Here on this other path, and we don't really have a false, but that's fine. That just means that it won't process it. On this other path, we're only going to go if the voice is not empty. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. Pull this down, just clean it up a little bit. We can always use the tidy. So now in this case, for this particular tool, it should respond with some text, but no voice. Let's test it out. Test the workflow. Capture this new idea related to why the no code architects community is the best one out there. And I'll tell you why. It's because we engineer cool stuff like this. So let's check it out. Oops, I was in the wrong assistant. I was in my demo. Let's jump back over here to the one we were building. Using the tool. Notice how it didn't go down this path, but it did respond. So if we look at the text here, we got the text, but no voice. So now we can really control the output and the experience for the user. And notice here, now we don't have the voice. All right, so now we're making some progress. We've got our new content coming into our database. Let's build out some additional tools. So now let's add in the ability to rewrite content. Remember in my example here, I added an idea. So maybe like you're out on the go and you add in a bunch of ideas and then you come back later and you want to actually rewrite and refine an idea. So let's go ahead and do that. In this case, what we're going to need is 2 different tools. So now we have the CID here, which is how we reference these different pieces of content. But in order to make an update to an Airtable row, you can't update from a CID. You need a record ID. And we can't actually see a record ID on these rows. It's not how Airtable works. It's actually hidden. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a formula just so we can see it. So you can see what I mean, record ID. And then to expose it, we're going to type record, and then we grab this and then just close the parenthesis just like that, create the field. So now we have the record ID just like that. So this is what we need in order to actually update the record. So if we come back to our example here, we have this message here, which is rewrite content. And if we open that up and we open up its individual workflow, we're going to see the input for this workflow is the additional content. So when I rewrite the content, I'm going to say something like, hey, let's update C6 and let's expand on that. Let's talk more about why MCP servers are cool. And let's talk about the 3 top advantages. And you can say as much as you want. And the more you say, the more it's going to use your own voice. And the less you say, the more it's going to rely on what ChatGPT is able to figure out. And of course, all of that is something that you can configure. But just from experience, that's what happened. The less you give, the more it's going to make stuff up. The more you give, the more it's going to use your content. But what we need to pass this new workflow is the additional content and the record ID. So let's come back to our server here, go back to the editor, and we're going to add another tool. And again, we're going to use a call N8N workflow tool. And we're going to call this one, we'll call it rewrite content. And down here, we'll type rewrite content tool. Call this tool when asked to rewrite a CID or piece of content. The more you can be verbose here, the better, right? Because you're just telling the agent and the tool like more context. So CIDs are content, and these things all come together with how successful these agents are. The more tools you add, the more specificity is going to matter. So now we're going to go ahead and create another workflow, create a sub workflow. Let's just name everything now so it's easier. We'll call this rewrite content. And over here, we'll rename this to rewrite content. And then we'll define the variables. So again, what we need is the additional content, and we need the record ID. So that's good. We test the step, then we have those 2 variables here. So then I'm going to jump back to my example here and we'll simplify this just a little bit. But again, if you want these full scripts, make sure to jump into the no-code architects. You'll find the more expanded scripts inside the content engine database solo, but the ones we're building here will also be inside of the automation vault. So here, the first thing that we need to do is just get the row, load the row here so we can actually modify it. So we'll come here, we'll do Airtable, we'll get the content, get a record. And again, we'll select the right base, type solo, and we'll type KEDB solo. And then for the table, we'll use content. And for the record ID, we'll pass in this record ID. Now, again, because we haven't tested this, it's just going to be null. So I'm just going to try to build as much as I can without actually being able to test this. And now next up, we're going to use OpenAI, move this over a bit. This is going to rewrite the content. So model, I'll just use mini. And now, unfortunately, we get kind of stuck here because we don't have any previous data. Now, one thing we could do is we could come over to KEDB solo, and I think we could grab one of these records, we could copy it, jump back to our rewrite content, and I believe we can jump over to executions and copy the data or edit the data. Actually, we can just edit it straight from here, and we can put in a record ID. We do need it to be a string. And I'm going to go ahead and put in some additional content here. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm editing the JSON that's in this workflow so that I can test things and build it without having to go through the tedious process of jumping over here, running the agent, sending an idea, having it flow through, all that kind of stuff. So these are just like little techniques. Expand on the top 3 advantages of why MCP servers are super cool. So now we can test this step, unpin and test, it had pinned it because I had saved the output changes. If you're not familiar, there's this little pin here. And what this pin does, if you pin data, it means that you can test this using the pin data and it won't lose it from test to test. So if I play this and I look inside here, we have our test data. And it's going to keep using that until I unpin it. And the reason why it asked me that before is because I was trying to get to the same thing through executions and copy here, but I didn't really need to do that. From here, you can edit the data right there. I had just forgotten that. So now we're passing that in. So now we should be able to test this. It's going to load up that row. So now when we go in here, we can actually pull that data in. So I'm just going to use what I have here. Basically, it's like you're a professional writer, just describing the role, and this should be a system prompt. Then we'll add another message. This is going to be a user prompt. And then all this does is it says, here's the original document to rewrite. In this example, again, I loaded it from a document as opposed to just the text field. But it's basically saying, here's the original document, the original content with the new instructions and content to incorporate. And then it passes in the additional content and it says, please rewrite it. So I'm just going to grab this and then we'll switch the variables. Drag that into the user. Now in this case, we don't have the document. So we're just going to pass in the text, just like that. And then in this case, because we named everything the same, rewrite content, it is recognizing it. But if it wasn't, if you took this out and simply drag this in here, it's going to be there. So it's basically taking the original content, the new content, and rewriting it. Let's test it. So again, we're modifying this original text, which was why the no-code architects community is the best. And then it combined it with our new additional content, which is about MCP servers, and then it rewrote it to include the 3 different things about MCP servers, along with the original content to create new content. So then from there, all you need to do is just update the original Airtable row. So we'll go to Airtable again, and this time we'll do an update record. And then we got to set the base, of course, solo, KEDB solo. And then for the table here, again, we'll go with content. It's going to look up the columns. In this case, we're not going to mess with the description. We're only going to mess with the text. So we're going to take the new text, drop it in there. We're not doing anything with images or video, and we need to match this ID. So we're going to drop that ID in there. And now we can test the step. Let's check out the text. And there's our updated content. So we had the original idea modified with the 3 things that make MCP really amazing. So now we're done with our rewrite content, but we still have a little bit of work to do because again, remember in our rewrite content here, we passed in a static value, which was done through the editor up here. And then we pinned it. So now we got to actually make it work. So I'm going to go ahead and unpin it. So we're using real data. Let's save it. And then we got to come back to our server here. So now we have our rewrite content. But again, remember, in order to rewrite the content, we need the record ID, right? So we need an ability for the server to look up the record ID using the CID. So looking at the server here, we don't need an entirely new workflow. We can just use this here, get record ID, which is just a search. So what this is doing is it's searching the database for the CID so that it can get access to the record ID. And this particular tool is used by a lot of other tools. So this is an example where there are many times where we have to use one tool before we can use the next tool. In order to rewrite the content, we need to use tool number 1 to unlock the ability to use tool number 2. So let's jump back to our server. Again, we're adding an Airtable search. We're going to select a search. We're going to, again, find the base, solo, content, and now we need the search term. So we're going to say where curly brace CID equals, and here's where we have to put some quotes. And then in here, we needed to move over to an expression. Then here, I'm going to use 2 curly braces. And then here, what we're going to do is use from AI, and we're going to put CID. And what that does is it tells the model that we need a CID, and we're going to add it into here. So a lot of the times you can just use the magic use from AI here. And in this case, we only need to return 1 row. So I'm going to modify that just to 1 because we're only going to return 1 row with any given CID. And then I'll go ahead and put quotes around this. I do believe we need quotes. We will test that to make sure. So basically when I say a CID, it's going to map it and put it into this search for us. And then it's going to return 1 row, and it's going to return that record ID so that we can use it in the other tools. And then here, again, you're going to want to name things get record ID. So now we have the get record ID tool, and we'll save that. Let's go ahead and test it First, I do need to come in here and I need to set these here. So let's set the defined automatically by the model, and we'll do the same thing here. And then we'll add the description, map in the additional content that was sent into the AI agent. So again, just being really descriptive about what's happening. Map the additional content that was sent into the AI agent. And then for the record ID, we have to say get the record ID from the get record ID tool using the CID sent into the AI agent. So I'm not even going to adjust the AI agent here and explain anything. Let's just see if it works. I think everything is good here. We've saved this. We have our tools. We've saved that. Let's go ahead and see if it works. Let's test this. So we're testing it all on its own live. And now let's say, please rewrite C6 to instead have the top 6 reasons why you should join the no-code architects and why MCP servers are so cool. Let's give this a test and just see how it goes. Going through, it's getting the tools. It's really going to have to go through 2 tools. Okay, so we had an error. So received tool input did not match expected schema. So let's take a look. It's probably easier to look at the server itself. We can look at the executions. Let's see the last response here. Got record ID. Did it respond? It did respond with the record ID. So that get record worked, but notice that that's the second command. So this one here is the rewrite, or it didn't even go there. So let's come back to the server here. It looks like we're probably just going to need to add some additional instructions here. You can use this here, the logs, to just see how the agent behaved. It did get the record, but then it wasn't able to map that into the... So let's come here and then let's just go ahead and add in a new tool, and we'll say rewrite content. Here are the steps for rewriting content. Step 1, use the get record ID tool to look up the record ID using the CID, and then we'll go ahead and say e.g. C65 or C or C54. Step 2, pass the record ID and the additional content to the rewrite content tool. Sometimes it's better just to kind of type these things out, pass the record ID and additional content. And if you put quotes around it, it's just a little bit more information for the agent to understand. And here too, capture new idea tool and rewrite content tool. And then we can give it the output. And we can say CID has been updated, and let's just leave the voice alone. So let's see if that's enough to fix it. So you can see I'm just trying to do as much as I can with defining as little as possible. Let's test this, and let's just put in the same request. All right, we got an error again. Let's just keep at it. Jump over here. Let's see what's happening in the rewrite tool. So you can see what's happening here is it's not actually calling the rewrite tool. So here I'm just going to come in and I'm going to say, use this tool when asked to rewrite content in the system. I'm going to jump back to my agent and grab this key line here, which is some additional detail. I'm just going to actually use this entire line. Use this tool when asked to rewrite content with any additional ideas on a CID. The CID should match this format, yada, yada, yada. So let's go ahead and use that, give that a try. These are the different things that you'll go through as you go. And let's go ahead and give it a test. So looking here, we don't have the response from the agent. We just have the acknowledgement that we got the request. So let's jump back to our agent real quick. And it looks like we have the item, the output here has been updated. It just hasn't gone through the filter here. So let's test that. It's going through the filter. Now we should be able to respond back to Telegram. And there we go. We have CID 6 has been updated. And if we check out our Airtable database, we have our updated text that has been rewritten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is what we asked it to do, add the top 6 reasons. So now we have our agent running using multiple tools, and also using the get record ID first in order to actually rewrite the content, pass in the record ID, and then pass in the additional content that we passed it in from Telegram. Now, one other insight I do want to provide here is that if you're working with your AI agent and it's just not doing exactly what you want for whatever reason, and you're really driving yourself crazy because it seems like you've really explained it well and it's just not working, you can also take a look at the model that you're using. So if you remember in the beginning, we used 4.0 mini, and this is a cheaper model, and it's cheaper for a reason. It's because it's not as good. It's not able to reason as well. And so if you're ever having issues, not only could it be the actual system prompt or how you've built out all of these different tools, how you've defined these variables, how you've worded them, how you've set up these descriptions in your tools. If you've done a really good job there and it's still not working, and you feel like anyone should be able to understand these instructions, jump back to your model and pick something that's a little bit more advanced, other than something like GPT 4.0 mini, where it's a little bit smarter and it can make better decisions based off of what you've put in there. So now a quick check-in on our agenda here. We're making good progress. There's still a few more things to discuss here on the AI agent and the MCP server. And again, make sure to stick around to the end when we talk about 3 different ways to monetize this AI voice agent. All right, so now you have a pretty good idea of how to set up the AI agent and the Telegram, and then being able to add your own tools with the MCP server. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few of the other content repurposing tools here. We also have the update publish date. So all this is doing is running an Airtable update, and it's updating the publish date. Again, we're passing in that record ID and using the AI to automatically fill that in. And then of course, using that description, and then we're passing in that publish date from the AI agent using the from AI keyword. We could have used this as well, but in this case, I just ended up typing it out manually. We also have approve content and delete content and get content. These are all relatively the same as well. Very simple automations. This one here, again, we're just passing in the record ID and then using the description and telling it to use the get record ID tool. And then we're just changing the status to approved. And that's all mapping back to this slightly more complicated Airtable database from the KEDB Solo project, where we keep track of status and publish dates and a bit more information than we filled out on this particular test database that we were building for this automation. And then we built out this one, capture new idea. This tool here, read to me, is doing nothing more than simply loading up the document and returning the contents of the document. And then just like how we set up the agent here with the text and the voice response, we're mapping in the contents of that document into the voice so that it can actually read back our content to us in case we're on the go and we don't have the ability to read it ourselves off of the Telegram interface. And then we also have these 2 tools here, create tweet pic and generate AI image. This tool here is using this platform called Placid, and it's simply calling their API and generating a tweet pic using these different templates here. The automation is doing nothing more than just taking the text from the content, creating a caption, and then inserting that caption into their API through here to create this tweet pic, just like these ones that you see here in the Content Engine database. And then here as well, we have generate video, which is using HeyGen. If we take a quick look at this workflow here, it's very simple as well. We're just getting the Airtable record like we did before. We're getting the contents of the Google Doc, and then we're calling the HeyGen API. That's this service here where you can just basically send in text and it uses your AI avatar to generate a video. And then we built this one together, the rewrite content. And the way I published the content straight through Telegram was with this tool here, which is currently using the AirShare API. That's this service here. It's a auto posting platform that has an API, and you can use this to automatically publish content. So it's simply getting the Airtable record, getting the contents of the document, and calling that API to post to any platform you want: LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. It really works on all of them. So that gives you a good overview of how to add additional tools, given that we went through some of these other tools. Now let's jump right into how to monetize an AI agent just like this. So first and foremost, you can use it to create content for your own brand to grow your business. This is the only way that I've been using to get new clients and new customers into my business, is simply by creating content to grow my personal brand and to establish myself as the expert. And I create a lot of content, and I've been using a very similar system to the one that I showed you, the Content Engine Database Solo, in the previous parts of this video. And I basically just use it to create a ton of content, and it builds value with the audience. They see me as the expert. And then from that, they end up buying my products. And it works really, really well. And I encourage everybody that is building a system like this, even if you're going to sell it to somebody else, or you're going to essentially sell it as a service to somebody else, you want to be using it yourself to create content. And with the addition of the Telegram interface, it just makes it even that much more easy to brainstorm your ideas, refine those ideas, monitor those ideas. And then again, like I showed you, you can also use the Airtable database on the back end when you're sitting at a computer to see a lot more data and manage it, and even work with your team to keep it organized and keep all the published dates organized, and to really do a good job at producing daily content and repurposing it using these different actions here, turning the same content into multiple different formats, taking the same content, reformatting it, creating new videos, tweet pics, and scaling from there. Beyond your personal brand, you can also sell this as an AI product. So this is something that I've been doing for a couple of years now. I have a product called the Content Engine Database, much like the Solo version that you see right here. The one that I'm selling here is called KEDB Extreme. This system here has been out for about a year now. And the thing that's really cool about it is that I have this landing page here. It describes everything. It gives a clear idea of how it works. We've got all these different testimonials, and people can just buy it straight from the web page. And it is $4,500 and 500 extra bucks if you want me to do a install for you. And what's cool about this is that a lot of people just come to the site here without ever making a call to me to learn anything more about it, because I explained it, and it's also very unique, and they can just purchase it. Now, one thing that I want to make clear about these AI products is that I'm not just selling the template. And this is the secret to these types of products. I'm also selling coaching with this product. I create a lot of content, and I've really developed all sorts of ideas and concepts and ways of helping people implement these different types of systems. And it's much more than just technology, right? So people have teams, they have processes, they've got all sorts of different things that they need to map together and get together and organize. And maybe they have an existing workflow that they need to migrate. So there's a whole lot more to do with these automations to really get the full maximum ability out of these automations. When you develop these products, come up with some sort of template plus coaching that allows you to charge a lot more for it. Because if you help people maximize what they're buying, you can turn a $500 template into something that's $5,000, because you're helping them implement it right, do it faster, so that as soon as they buy this thing, they're getting an instant result. Otherwise, with automation templates, people just tend to see them as templates, and they don't value them as much if it's not packaged with that expertise, which is going to truly accelerate their ability to use it and then also maximize the potential of what it offers. And so then one last thing that I want to cover when it comes to ways of monetizing your automation is just selling this as a service. So a lot of people aren't going to want to set this up. Now, there are a lot of people that will, but there is a whole other group of people that is super busy. They don't want anything to do with automations. They simply just want to scale their content. And if you can make it easy for them, if you can show them a system, if you can also potentially coach them through the process, and you can show them such an easy way to create content that has never been done before. There's nobody else building content machines on the market where you can do it all through Telegram. And not only that, but this is one of the first use cases that I've seen where somebody is developing an AI agent that actually does something and it makes sense, right? There's a lot of agents out on the marketplace right now where people are creating all these end-to-end automations, but they're just flashy toys. This is actually something where you can deploy something and have it work with a client and have it make sense. It's a product that's using an AI agent that makes sense, because people use their phone. They're used to using their phone. They're used to using these chat apps. They don't necessarily even want to log into a backend system and manage it and nerd out on all that stuff. If they can just go onto their phone and just brainstorm what their ideas are and then actually publish it all from their phone, that's going to be super valuable to someone that's busy and on the go. And if you want to launch this with a bunch of different users so that it works with a bunch of different clients, then all you really need to do is come back into your system, and then you're going to add another field here, which is where you can add different users, just like that. And then you'll be able to segment the different pieces of content based off of different users. And then in Telegram, you'll be able to give people this bot. And then in the automation, all you have to do is to determine which user is actually sending you the message. So you're going to end up mapping this user ID here to some sort of ID on the back end for this particular user, so that when a message comes in from a different user, you're able to filter by that user ID so that they're only able to see the content for them and not for anybody else. So again, if you're interested in getting your hands on the Content Engine database, the automations that we built out today, make sure to jump into the No Code Architects community. You'll get access to all of the templates here. There's a business clarity course, and you can also get access to the Content Engine database solo. And there's calls with me almost every single day. So I hope to see you inside the community. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.